This is lab 1.1, mechanical forces and spring constants. A couple of things about this lab is that you will be measuring various things. One of those things is going to be force. You will also be measuring a stretch length of a spring. And essentially what the lab is about is trying to figure out how stretchy your spring is. Not every spring is alike, and there are very unique springs out there. So you will have to have a firm grasp of what weight or force of gravity is, as well as a couple of other little concepts here and there. All right, so lab 1.1, a couple of materials you're gonna need are gonna be a mechanical breadboard. That's pretty easy to identify. You will need your support rod bases, 3 rod connectors, and the short crossbar along with threaded support rods. So these are the long ones with the thread on them. In addition to that, you will need your spring and a hook bolt along with your weight hanger, a slotted weight set, and a ruler. All right, I should have mentioned that most of the stuff, aside from your base and then your support bases, most of the stuff can be found in your hardware and measurement section. But all I'm doing is I'm taking these bases and I'm inserting them into the slots that are already on the breadboard. I'm gonna tighten them down just a little bit. I don't want to ever tighten anything down too tight, and it just makes it that much more difficult to disassemble. So I put in the bases, and now I'm putting in the support rods, and these are just screw in, and same thing. You don't want to screw them in too tight, but just tight enough. And you got your support rods up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take one of these connectors and I'm going to go ahead and remove one of the bolts and add in a hook bolt. Now this hook bolt is going to be there so that I can hang my scale from when I need to. So pretty simple. I got a free moving hook bolt on there. I'll take a rod connector and real gently tighten that down so that when I come up to assemble my setup, it's pretty easy to do. Now once you have these connected, then it's going to be all right for you to tighten them down a little bit. But again, what I said earlier was that you don't want to tighten them down too tight. A lot of times they just end up making it a little more difficult to tighten down. So there's the first part of the setup. Pretty simple after that is we are going to test the stiffness of the spring. So your spring is going to go on your hook bolt, and now we're going to take our hanger and we will be adding weight from our onto our hanger as the lab progresses. A couple tips for you guys would be ensuring that you understand that this has a mass to it. So that's definitely to be considered. The mass is 50 grams, and so if I were gonna add a 200 gram slotted weight, well, now I would consider this to be 250 grams. But there's your setup. It's a basic setup. Minor adjustments here and there would need to be made to make sure your setup is nice and sturdy. One other tip I'd like to mention is when you're doing this lab, it's important that you're concise with your measurements. One of the easiest thing to do is mess up the measurement when you start to calculate how far the spring is stretched. So an easy reference point to start with is the very top of this spring to the very bottom of the spring. So I would take my ruler and I would measure in centimeters the length of my spring from the very top to the very bottom, or end to end. So as it stretches, I know that I'm still measuring the same points from one point to the other.